Welcome to the Select Board meeting for Monday, May 12th. Call to order at 6:35 p.m. Did you print agendas? Okay, thank you.
Stand by.
I just realized this was not the agenda when I grabbed it.
Do you mind grabbing these from the
Would
printer?
you, please? Just because I will look for it all night if I don't have it handy.
Oh, he did print them. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks. You get the gold star to the thank you.
Employee of the month.
Discussion regarding scheduling of the special town meeting and the draft warrant review. So we backed into some potential dates, targeting June 25th or the 30th as a drop dead, which would be signing and approving on the 9th. And put tentative out there for a meeting on the 22nd. I think you won't be available. But,
Correct.
you will be?
Yes.
Okay. And waiting to hear back from Finance and Capital on that.
Correct.
And then we also have the 2nd and 9th. If we need the 2nd as well, we could possibly do the 2nd. I don't know your availability, but that's a tentative for the 2nd, and then our regular meeting on the 9th to finalize.
And the 9th gives you what you need to hit the 25th?
2 weeks plus a day or two
Plus
to
a
print,
day or
post,
two,
and
yeah.
all that.
Yeah,
And get it out in
okay.
the mail, and gives you 2 days to post and a couple to get it out in the mail.
Okay.
And the 30th, if we need to push it out and really had to go one more week, we could always do post the same night, though I hate to.
Yeah.
The following week.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to if we don't have to. Do you both have availability on the 2nd?
Yeah, I was just looking at that. I
Okay.
should
Should
not have an issue with either the 2nd or the 9th. No, it should be good.
Okay. We'll have our normal meeting on the 9th. No matter what, we'll have the 9th.
Yeah.
And the 2nd will be TBD based on the 22nd.
Yeah, so that
Okay.
I am good for that evening if needed, so.
Okay. Excellent. If you didn't already, want to let the moderator know.
I'll reach
We're
out to him
targeting the
next.
25th.
Yep.
All right. In terms of the list and draft, variety of items on there. Anything with the items already on there, on the draft?
I am good with everything except for one question on the draft with Article 3. The dollar amount spelled out in Word $23,580, and when printed in numerical form in parentheses and down below it's $23,500. So I just think one is a grammatical error, an oversight.
Get the right
But
one.
That is correct.
It's actually on page 7 of the packet, page 2 of the draft, on the left-hand side, Article 3, third and fourth lines.
Yeah, there's no 80.
That will be corrected.
And going down to Article 7, the Museum Committee under Section 3, Item 1, which is page 8. It mentions the terms of 3 years. I just want to clarify, are those staggered terms or are they all concurrent?
They are staggered. And I thought that was addressed in a different bullet, but if it's not, we should add it to that.
I know when we originally talked about it in one of the memos, it did say staggered.
And I do believe I read staggered somewhere as well, but in, actually under Article 911, establishment and powers, the last word is staggered, which is on the same page, left column diagonally above, so.
Yeah, but that's for the Historic Commission.
That's the prior.
Right, so that needs to be carried into the
Yep.
Museum Committee.
When we get to final, we'll break the header over if it trips, because it looks like you're in the same
Yeah, that'd be
article
clearer.
without having the header on the next column. Maybe you guys talked about this before a little bit, but this also doesn't have to be established by town meeting. We could just establish a committee.
Correct.
And I
That's
don't
true.
know if there's a preference.
That's a good point.
I mean, technically, even historical could create the committee, but right under them potentially. But I think they are not. Didn't sound like they want to have those two together anymore at all. So those
Yeah,
two,
the,
those
the
two
purpose
purposes,
of separating, I
right,
think, would be cleaner if it was not under
not
historical.
right.
Um,
But the question, and I'm not saying we should or shouldn't, but
I
the
mean,
establishment can go either way, right? Maybe it lends more to any discussion on Article 6. Maybe around why make it smaller, what's the purpose, pros and cons. This may lend to discussion with the citizens about why historical feels that smaller is better because they're splitting this purpose off. But
yeah, and
I
I'm
don't
not
know.
opposed to the transparency of giving that,
yeah,
giving that ownership back to the residents to make that, have their voice be heard. You know,
would only be what happens if they don't. Then
then we don't have a care museum.
I was gonna
then
say,
who takes care of Care Museum?
well,
The three sitting in these seats right here.
well,
but to Scott's point and to yours, if the people say no, it's the people that we represent, and if that's what they want, then it's,
I agree with you, but
Right.
I don't know that the alternate is very clear on what happens.
I mean,
Although I guess actually technically we've assigned it to historical. This would reassign it. If this doesn't go through, it was never unassigned. Technically, we revisit that, right? It isn't necessarily back to the board. I'd be revisiting that. I think. Anyway, something to ponder. I'm going to solve it tonight, but something to ponder.
okay.
And maybe it is even just incorporating that into article information somewhere to say, if this doesn't happen, then what? You know, just to be bit clarity for the voters.
Okay.
Would it just continue or what? I digressed a little bit. We incorporated the stagger. We're incorporating the staggering language, right?
Correct.
It's missing.
Yep.
Okay.
There was, now that we're under that section, there was the recommendation from the Historic Commission members to make that a 3-member committee. I sent them the same language because I attended their meeting last week. So I just wanted them to see what was going to be in front of the 3 of you today. And then over the weekend, I got a response back from Commission Member Dodge, who had been speaking at one of your previous meetings about this request. And it sounds like after further reflection, they're actually in support of keeping it 5 because that's consistent with all your other boards and commissions. So I don't know if the 3 of you have a preference on composition.
I mean, 3 is a quorum. I would lean to 5 still, personally. I don't know about both of you.
If we are confident that we can maintain minimum of 3 so that they can conduct business. I mean, that was the whole purpose of going to 3, was
Correct.
that they could drop down to 2 and still maintain.
Correct.
I know there was some discussion about other residents that were interested,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm not.
Are there any other 3 except these? Us 3?
The Board of Health is 3. Board of Registrars is 3. Board of Assessors is 3. Those are the only ones I can think of.
Well, changing it is a town meeting vote if it's 3 or 5.
Once it's established,
Once it's established, if it's established this way.
which is
So,
interesting.
something
We
to
can
think about.
establish it under our purview in a select board meeting, but if we want to change our establishment from 3 to 5,
We'll change it in the next meeting. So that's a little bit of the dynamics of maybe the ease of change versus.
yeah. When you asked a question before, one of the things I was thinking about is there a way to, at the annual town meeting, don't have the language, but have a handout to talk about that we will be creating, and if people have input on that they could give it. And the reason that we're doing it within a board meeting is for the longevity of the ability to adjust as needed, the composition, the requirements, for the museum committee.
Good.
As years go on, that need is going to change, and rather than having to go to a town meeting every time you want to change one small line item in there, you can do that at the board level if it's appointed by the board.
It's
Or
more like an
created by the-
informational handout with please bring
so
your
that was,
feedback.
and I'm not saying that we do that. That was one of the thoughts that popped in
Option.
my head.
Well, we could do that, and I might recommend with the intent that in the next 1 to 3 years we would bring it as a permanent establishment, but give it a few years to
Let it
be
get
established
up and running.
and defined and a little more agile to adjust and get their footing, and then
Solidify
you could
it.
kind of hand these out as the base of what the board is thinking and how we're starting, but we're not going to establish it under town meeting yet, but expect to in the
Well,
coming couple years once they've had time to do a little bit of work and ensure that this design meets the criteria.
The ease of being able to change it at a board meeting would be beneficial for the first 2 to 3 years.
I mean, maybe it goes great for the first year and there's 5 or more people who want to be part of it, and we're like, okay, this is good.
Yeah, we're good.
Or maybe
Establish it,
it's
put it on
a little rocky
STM or an
and we,
ATM. Yeah.
and in a couple of years we finish it up.
Okay.
No,
So some other ideas.
All right.
that provides people, if they feel strongly one way or the other, they have an opportunity to provide input at the meeting. I
Right.
think that's a reasonable approach.
The other option, if you all want to keep those 2 options open, instead of having to call another town meeting to do this, you could always draft an article and pass over it if the conversation on the town meeting floor is that the preference is for the select board to create.
If our intention is to do it for the ease of doing it,
Mm.
I would rather just not put it on there and have it
Okay.
as a handout to read. Worst case scenario, if the handout for the, and the talk about it at the ATM in 2 days says,
Right.
we'd really like you to keep that on there, and we get a slew of feedback that says,
Oh, you want this
You want
handout
the
for
handout
Wednesday?
till
Yeah.
Wednesday? I thought you wanted the handout with the STM.
no.
Oh,
Okay.
Well, the reason I'm saying it that way is you have the ability to what Jim was just saying, if people weigh in,
Fair.
and,
I was of what I thought you meant initially, which was if our goal is to be flexible and as we kind of build it, then it doesn't.
it doesn't, yeah.
The goal is to be flexible. Then we wait some months or year before it will be on a town meeting warrant. So it's more informational to say this is supplemental to what the Article 6 change is. It also is
Okay.
informed to do this and
I can be amenable
in
to
building
that.
it. I mean, anyway, I'm not saying we have to.
I
We don't
would-
have to decide tonight either. So,
No, no.
unless you want it Wednesday.
No, I
I
can be
would
amenable to that.
reluctant to do it that way, only because, I think we already mentioned transparency. I know there are members in our community that are a little leery about what we do, how we do it, and if, I wouldn't want to present something that makes it look like we're gonna do it this way as long as we get our way. Otherwise, we're gonna pass over it and we're gonna do it later.
That sounds not like what we're trying to do.
Correct.
But it's absolutely not what we're trying to do, but it could give off that
But it's a
perception.
valid- yeah,
and
yeah,
some people's
absolutely.
interpretation might lead down
Uh,
a path that maybe,
We
valid
still have a
points.
meeting or two before we finalize. So whether it stays on or becomes a handout about what we plan to do in coming years, but to establish as a board now, and then change to, established by the voters in a future year, can be decided before then. So if it becomes a handout of this is kind of the design that we are going to put together and then kind of try out as appointed by the select board before it becomes established by the voters, potentially, that will be a handout at the SDM. Kind of supplemental to the historical request.
Yes.
Or it'll be an article. We'll define that by the time we finalize the warrant, but
Okay.
those are the two paths.
Yep.
Does that make sense? Okay. I know there's a lot more to think about there, so 100% we'll do it either way yet, but anything else on 7? Good with the strikes in 4 and 5?
Yes.
that was all I had for any of them.
Okay. On the list of items that's not on there yet, uh, did I miss that one? The tax abatement options about the HERO Act.
Yep.
We've got the data on what the impacts are potentially of changes from the assessor's office, from the assessor. And then whether or not we would designate a veteran parking spot or propose to at Town Hall. Maybe the second one first.
I don't have an issue with the second one.
I have no issue. I'd support the second one, and
Let's add it. In draft for next review, the language for
Okay.
the full. And then the Heroes Act piece. We can take no action, we can take some action, and there's some various ways we can adopt it, right? Based on the way I'm following those clauses.
I've read this like 3 different times since the
It's a lot
packet
there.
came out again, and there's part of me that still reads this and says, I'm just not getting it. Very clear about that.
So if I walk through this, I just want to make sure I'm following. There's 2 clauses. We can adopt 22I just by itself, or 22J. 22I, 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 within 22J, there's various levels that we could adopt. Is that what that's conveying? So I guess I first, and then they're cumulative if you also do J, but J has levels to accept. So 22I, we'll just do them one by one. Does that make sense? Start with 22I. That's a 5% COLA. If they're not already at 100%, it stops when they hit 100% if they catch up to it, right?
Yes.
So,
That one's straightforward.
right. And that's $1,000 first year based on the current status. Keep increasing by whatever that COLA is each year set by DOR. Where that would top out, I don't know. Like when everyone was maxed out. But I think that ends up being the culmination of all of it, which is almost 20,000 more, right? If they ever caught up
Yes.
in today's dollars. So our 24,000 currently becomes 42 if it's 100%. But adopting I is $1,000 impact this year and then just slowly escalates from there.
Yep.
J would allow an increase in exemption up until at 100%, determined each July. So if we adopt J every July, we can add some more if they're not all maxed until they are.
And that's that compounding that you were
That's
talking
what I was
about
talking
earlier.
about. Yeah.
Yeah.
What I don't understand in this, maybe is my one question, was the veteran has to pay a minimum of 10% of the actual bill, but it says 100% exemption is available. How do you get 90 and not 100?
I recall
little
when we were
confused.
working on the senior citizen tax work-off program, we were advised by the Board of Assessors that a citizen must still pay 10%. So I've heard that language before. That's been a consistent exemption requirement. The language that it also can go to 100% seems contradictory, so I don't understand where that's coming from. That stood out to me as well.
Unless it's 100% of the 90% potential,
Right.
which is just confusing language, but often how things are written.
It's possible. I can
You
ask
can get
the
to
board.
100% of the allowed
was gonna
exemption,
say
which
the
can be
allowable-
no more
yeah.
than 90 of your total
Okay.
liability, right? Is that-
Yes.
That's sort of
Put that
the way-
math equation together.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, but
That's the way that
kinda-
I read it and interpreted it, and then I started second guessing myself, looking at it and wondering if I'm wrong.
I will ask them for clarification.
Okay.
Maybe overthinking it at this point. Because I looked at it as the 23,800 plus the 18,750 and thinking, okay, well,
I did
for
too.
this year we're talking max 45 but
And from there, we're effectively, what, no more than 2.5 plus change in value? Because if they're all at max, whether that's 100% or 90% of the liability, from there, it just goes up by, if it's 100%, if we've already set it 100%, it doesn't go up.
right.
It just goes up by the change in tax rate basis for that individual.
True.
So if someone has a $1,000 bill and they can have 90%, it's 900 exempt. That's 100% of what we can give them. And next year, now it's 1,100. They're going to get 90% off of the 1,100. So the change is just that change in their liability. There's no percentage increase based on any of this because it's already all maxed.
I was going to say 22I and J only give us the rates and how quickly we get up to that max.
Right. Because it's a percent of their total. It's not a dollar amount. So it never goes up again. The percentage just stays at 100.
Right. It's how quickly do we want to allow it to
Do
get
we?
to 100.
Or do we even?
Right.
Maybe I could, but it'd probably take a long time.
at 5%, or whatever DOR sets it, yeah, that would take a while to get there. J is the escalator that allows us to get it there faster. In combination with the I.
Actually, 20-something years.
If you're talking just I alone.
I mean, in theory,
In theory, yeah.
because to get to 100% today is 18,750.
Mm-hmm.
Because that would move them all to 100% of the allowable exemption, whatever that is, 90 or 100
Yep.
of their actual. I mean, if you adopt J, you don't need I. If you do it at 100%, right?
If you did J at 100%, no, I would be
Moot point, we're already there.
we're already there. You've maxed it out. So it's whether or not, when we're talking, we had a lot of conversations about that pool of money, where it's coming from, and how much will we have available. And so if we were concerned that putting it up to in FY25 standards saying that, let's go for, 26 or 27, that we're talking $20,000, ballpark. Can we afford it? Can that pool?
From overlay, right? Is
Yeah,
that my
it's from
recollection?
overlay. Yep, that's where the abatements come from. So as long as, that's the only piece of that tells me or gives me a little pause of how quickly do we get to 100%, which is where I think we should go, but just how quickly. And some of that could be based on all of the factors that are feeding off of the overlay at the moment. A lot of unknowns coming out of that. And so if we do J, we could do year 1 with a smaller percentage. Year 2 could be, once you start getting some more visibility on what's happening with the overlay and where that stands and the future of the funding source into the overlay, you could quickly move 22J on one of those Julys up to 100% based on what's available in the moment.
And we could get, every year we'd get the current assessment on what's the delta.
Right.
From
that's
where
what-
we are.
Where we are.
Right.
Is this the year that it makes no,
Right. If we
doesn't
do
put any,
20%, now what's left is the 100%, 0 to 100 is whatever that number
whatever
is.
that number is, and is that attainable? Is that, sustainable year in and year out? And if it is, you voted at 100%.
I mean, because the dollar numbers are pretty small. I feel like once we've
I
done
think
it.
so. I think once you're there,
Once you get there, the sustainability is
It's
pretty
easy.
straightforward, so.
Yeah, the only time that it would be an issue is if you got there and you went from 34 to, 200 participants. Then,
Right.
then your number,
Right.
would look drastically different.
Or the valuation of those with
Or
exemptions.
the valuation of those property, those 34, just skyrocketed
Well, it's 34 today. To your point, it could be 300,
in 10
or
years.
it could be 50, and the other 15 or 16 are way higher value, and it skews a little bit.
Yeah.
Is there a cap on the amount? I mean, if it's 90 or 100%, whatever, it's of whatever the valuation is, there's no cap on what your value or your tax bracket is, or your tax, not bracket, but the tax amount is, right? It's just percentage.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
And each
Just-
year,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, so what you're talking about and what I had mentioned is each year it could go up. The dollar amount could go up based on the number of participants. The percentage is always going to be whatever is voted in.
Correct.
If it's a vote on 22J annually, there is no requirement that if it was 20% last year, it has to be over 20% the next year.
Let me clarify this, because it's a great question. my understanding of what they're talking about is J is right now, let's say we're at 0. I know we're not, but let's say we are from a J standpoint. We're at 0.
Yep.
We vote 20% in July. Vote in, J gets adopted. We decide 20% in July. 80% of the liability is still the taxpayers.
Right.
In July 2026, my understanding, if I'm following this, is that the liability is 80%. We can either cut down the 80 or we can't. Or we do nothing. We don't go back. We can't go back. Like, that's their new baseline.
That's how I understood it when they were
Okay.
explaining it.
So basically, if we exempt 20% on July 1, that's 0 now for July 1, 26,
In perpetuity.
in perpetuity.
Okay.
That's the new
That's
0.
that's the question I was
Their
asking.
80%
is
liability is the new
is
0 point.
in perpetuity, and that's really
So if we then want to do another 50%, it's 50% of the 80, or 0% of the 80, but the 100 never comes back.
okay.
That's how it's how I interpret this. If we're voting at an increase each July, because an increase would be additive. It assumes that what you did last doesn't go away and can't go down. But
Okay.
these are questions for sure, right? I guess based on that premise, my thought was if we were going to put forth this for vote, I would recommend we just put J forward. And then we have the ability to do 0 to 100 every year and keep building on that, whereas the COLA is a 5% or approximate that is set by another entity, and it is what it is, whether we feel like we're in a fiscal position to adopt it or not that year.
Yeah.
Can't do more, can't do less. Whereas J would allow us to do as much as we felt we were able to,
Agreed.
from nothing and up, but it's completely flexible every year, because once it's adopted, we can just continue to do it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And it would supersede I if we do J, easily.
It would supersede it if you're getting to a point of maxing it out.
Yes. Or in the ability to go much higher, much quicker if we
Yes.
chose to and were
Yeah.
able to.
Yeah. No, I don't have
Understood it wouldn't have the perpetuity of continuing to escalate no matter what. Would
I
be
mean-
reliant on the board to do that.
So obviously it would be reevaluated, each budget cycle, looking at what it would be presented for a July 1 effective annually.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a problem with using 22J and then annually looking at what do the coffers allow? How quickly, my goal would be how quickly could we get it up to 100%? And can we afford to in FY26, FY27, FY28? And each year you're looking at how much of that remaining delta can we chip away at until we finally get up to the using 22J to put us at 100% of the allowable 90% abatement. And I say that because our numbers, the dollar amount, unless we have a huge swing in either number of participants or assessments, the dollar amounts are going to be fairly reasonable to handle going forward. So that's my thoughts on it.
I did pull up the DOR's FAQ on this, and it says neither. It says J cannot, along with the other exemptions, decrease below 10%.
Say that one more time.
22J's additional exemption cannot reduce the tax owed below what a taxpayer would owe on 10%.
Yeah, so it is.
similarly
it
to
does
the
max
others.
out
So
to
it
the
doesn't,
90%.
it doesn't go to a 0,
Yeah.
it goes to 10.
And that the 100% that they're referring to is exactly what you said. It's the 100% of the 90% abatement that they
Exactly.
can receive.
Clear as mud.
Exactly.
I'm just, so. That's a part of me, and I know this is, we need to be responsible, but I think we all recognize that, this is an opportunity we can provide that many would argue our veterans have earned. And if we can afford to do it to the max, we should. Just sort of rewording what Scott said. There's a part of me that would say just set it at 100 now, and then we know what we're dealing with moving forward by and large. But also, should we do it gradually to leave ourselves room if we suddenly have an influx of vets move into the community and they all take advantage of it? Are we positioning ourselves for a world of hurt later with the unknown of some of the other issues? So,
But if we can't bring it back down, once we've done it, it doesn't,
yeah, once it's
we can
done,
do it on
it's done.
today's impact, but we'll never,
Right.
know nor be able to mitigate what that could be in the future, except to not
Correct.
do it.
So if we were to do a 20 or a 50 now, and we could monitor the population trends and changes and make other decisions once some of the unknowns are known.
Mhm.
Again, I guess going back to something that's already said, but I'm trying to process it by thinking out loud.
Hold on a second.
You reading the language from DOR?
Yeah. Are you?
I had it up and I thought we were moving on, so I closed it back down.
Yeah, no, it's just,
Bring it back up.
the one that gets me is one of the last questions, which is what's the impact of both, right? So we said it compounds, but we're assuming it was doing the same thing. Their example is this. So they say both operate, right? So clause 22, 400 exemption. We accept 22I and it's 5%. Now it goes to 420, right? There's your 5% increase. But it compounds, so they accept J, we accept J and increase it to 100%. The exemption's now 840, not 800. It compounded I. It's not an accelerator for getting to J fast. I mean, it doesn't get to the same end state. It actually compounded the two. So the 400 got the 5% increase, and then it got a 100% increase on top. So 400 became 840. Clear as mud, you said a few minutes ago?
That's what I said. I refer to the
So J
minutes.
isn't accelerating getting to the same end state because it didn't stop at 800. It got to 840.
So that the part that makes it unclear to me then is
I know what's missing.
in their table. I'm not sure that's reflected the same in the table that we got in our packet.
I don't think it is.
That's what was throwing me off, because this table that we got from the assessors does not look like 100% clause of 22J. They're saying the impact is going from 20, not from 20 to 40, but because it's 100% escalator on 22I, that looks to me like it's $400, which is a much greater escalator than 100% of the original 5% increase. Because what you're just saying is I gives you 5%, which would translate to a certain dollar amount, $20.
Okay.
And if J gives you 100% escalator on that 20, that 20 becomes 40.
No, I'm saying plus 100% of the base exemption you had before you got the 20. What's missing here is the base exemption, which we're understanding is currently 23.8 in the community, right? 23,800 is the base
Yes.
today here. So we can add 5% to the 23.8, that's I. And then multiply times 2 if we do 100% of J.
Right.
What I'm not clear on is whether that can be more than 18,750, because 18,750 is 90% of everyone's liability currently.
Okay.
Or is 1870? Well, I guess it would have to be. Because if our current liabilities, if our current exemptions are 23.8 and you could do 100% more, it would be 47.6. But they're not showing another 23.8 under 100% J. So it must mean we cap all of the 90% exemptions before we get double what our current exemption is.
Because this is an average, and you're going to have, or this is the aggregate, so you're going to have some ebb and flow in that depending on property value and several other factors.
Well, just the idea that if you can do 100% more than you are today, and
Right.
today it's 23.8, you could do another 23.8. The table shows that at 100% more, we can't get to 23.8, which means it must be hitting the 90% cap on some, maybe not all, but on some,
On some.
before they get double.
Correct.
So maybe it's a moot point here, because 90% of all the liability we have may not be more than 18,750 more. May not be 100% more.
But based on the information that you have right now, we don't know.
I can't
that.
tell because you
Right.
don't know if any of the 34 are at 90% in all these
Correct.
scenarios. And I think what I realized, at least for me, is missing in all this. The current exemptions are what you get to add a COLA to and then up to double with J. It's the current exemption amount. It's not 100% of their liability. It's
Right.
double the current exemption. Not to exceed the 90%. But we don't know that everybody's already at 45%.
No, so the real numbers are the 400 on average for the 25 members that fall under class 22, the one member that's under 22A. Okay.
And
table was throwing me off.
And that assumes that all of them don't have more headroom above before they hit 90%
Correct.
at 400, 750, or 1,000.
Right.
If they do, then combining I and J has value to them.
Correct.
Otherwise, J is the max that anybody could get anyway, and our original philosophy is still true. So I think what one question I have is under our current exemptions, if everyone was able to get J at 100%, will they all be at the 90% max allowed exemption? Is anyone still paying more than 10% of the liability? If we were to do J at 100%.
Okay.
Because then that would inform whether I would help anyone on top of J, or vice versa. Because if we go from the premise of like we're hoping we could do J at 100%, and then everybody gets the max we could, if everybody's not maxed out against their liability, then that's a different data point.
Okay. Took me a while to get there.
It's not simple, which is why we have been struggling
Yeah.
with it for months.
No, and I appreciate the memo because it did, even reading the table threw me off, but saying it out loud clarified it.
So that's one I have, is that would all of them be at, if we were to adopt Clause J at 100%, would that put everyone at max allowed exemption? As in, they have to pay the 10% piece. I had one other one that was following that. Back in the DOR language, so it says under the impact of J, the very last sentence it said is the voter percentage will continue to apply in subsequent years unless or until another percentage is voted before July 1st. So does that indicate that every year you can reset it?
So that was my question before.
I know, and this says not what we were presuming, but more of maybe it can be. So we vote it for 100% this year, and then we look at it next June and go, ooh, we can do 50% this year. We can't do 100.
Right. And that's where my
And it
mind
comes back
went,
down.
and saying you can bring it back down.
Whereas then maybe I combined makes more sense because there's a base amount that just keeps increasing, or at least following COLA,
Mm-hmm.
that you can't go below.
And you're guaranteed that they're going to get the minimum.
They're going to get at least the COLA increase every year on the minimum.
And then based on our coffers, the ability to use J to either go up or down.
Based on our current
Fiscal
financial picture and pool,
Yeah.
which gives us some of that
Yeah.
future risk mitigation because you can adapt every year based on what's going on.
Okay.
So I guess
Which
maybe-
rewinds me all the way back to maybe we want both.
Originally you were saying let's not, and
Yeah.
Alan's saying let's do both.
Yep.
So we're doing both?
Full circle, we're not sure yet.
Full circle, but the idea of,
Stand by to stand by.
yeah, of doing both makes sense so that you guarantee the increase regardless of, through 22I, you're guaranteed the DOR increase each and every year. And then you allow the board to put forward a package to escalate that or lower it based on,
Escalate less than last year.
yeah, it's still going to escalate, but whether it's going to be escalated at anywhere from 10 to 100% escalator each and every
Zero.
year based on the financial, outlook.
So I'm hearing we're all leaning towards both of them. Would I need to understand better, J?
Yep.
Can J be retracted every year to 0
Okay.
or back up to 100? Whereas I is more of an inflation buffer.
Mm-hmm.
So I will get you those answers.
Okay.
Do you want me to add draft language in the warrant that would allow you to adopt both of these for your next review?
I would.
Yes.
Yes. Because we can adopt J and the number can be 0 if we're still not sure what to do in the 3 days after the special town meeting. Because it has to be done before July every year. So we have to do it by June 30 if it's adopted on June 25th.
If you were going to use it for
If we were going to use it
FY26.
for
So if we
FY26.
didn't have a number set at STM, then we would have to hold another meeting the very next day.
Or immediately after.
Yeah.
Or
maybe
Monday the 30th,
in
Mhm.
order to
just to,
vote a percent based on the
Mhm.
outcome of, okay.
or do we vote a percent ahead of time contingent upon approval?
True.
Or hold a meeting immediately following the STM, which I don't love the idea, but
Nor
because
do I.
it's flexible and it's just weird, but. Your clock is ticking
Not
that
for
night.
nothing.
Yes,
but
so
nor do
we're going to
I.
make Scott go to the 11th hour.
I think we should have a meeting on June 30.
I will be there. If you hold one, I will be there.
I know you will.
At 11 p.m.
11:58. I need call it to order and make a motion. Okay, enough of that humor. Any other questions that we didn't define for Brian for this one? It's enough to
No.
keep the conversation going.
I'll make those changes.
Thank you. Back to Article 5. We have some unspent funds from Arch Street Sewer Force Main.
Yes, and I've spoken to the town accountant about that.
Okay.
Recommendation from her understanding of the requirements is that the money can be appropriated by the voters for something you would have borrowed for,
Anything.
like another capital project.
Doesn't have to be wastewater.
Correct.
Under the current
Because,
authorization?
yes, and more so because we don't charge sewer rates, so while it's an enterprise fund, we self-fund.
Oh.
Use water as the example because it's solely reliant on ratepayers. It would probably be more of a stronger push to make sure that whatever, if the same scenario existed, that borrowing be used for something water related.
If the borrowing is being paid for by the ratepayers.
Correct.
So the principle that it's the taxpayers paying for the borrowing. So if it's a taxpayer borrowing authority project, it would be equivalent.
From her understanding of how this works, correct.
Okay. Purpose of my bringing that up is because there was going to be at least a recommendation or a thought process that we could appropriate those funds into the capital stabilization for wastewater, because we cannot return them, we can't unborrow them, and we can't prepay them against the loan.
Right.
So these funds are just sitting there unused because we've completed the project and there's excess funds which can't be applied to the loan balance, can't be unborrowed. So they just sit while we pay interest and don't use the money, basically. So one thought process was we'll put it in capital for wastewater because that's what it was borrowed for. So at least then it's in a purpose fund and can be used whenever we're ready to. Another thought process was use it, reallocate it to Church Street Bridge. It's a
Yeah.
different project, it's a different thing,
Farley.
but, or Farley, but we don't have a borrowing for Farley necessarily. So,
Agreed. Fair.
so I didn't think Church Street was viable because it wasn't wastewater, but if the idea is more the taxpayers were paying a borrowing for a capital project, the Church Street Bridge is the same thing,
Right.
at least in my mind. And if we don't need additional authorization, we have a balance that we're gonna have to pay even though the build out will be grant funded or, state and federal appropriations.
Right.
There's the money getting there that we have
Yeah.
to deal with in an earlier article or a later article. Article 2. So we could reduce it by using that money to pay a portion of it. So I bring it up to make it kind of transparent that piece was out there that we haven't dealt with. I didn't know this newest news, so I think we'll review it with Capital and Finance and see
Yeah.
what their thoughts are on the best way to go.
See what the impact.
I have an opinion, but
Yeah.
I'll let them, we'll kind of maybe discuss it in our joint meeting and figure out what to do. At which
I'll get
point it
the
may not be an
final-
article, it may not need to be anything, but just an action.
I'll get you the final balance. I believe it was just over 100, 107, something like that, but I'll get it for you all.
And you could use it. You're talking about using that to offset the 300 we're requesting in Article 2
Right.
to lower that.
Right. We just take that right off the top, knowing that's there, if that's an
And so
allowed use. This is the thing we need to do as capital, if Capital
Is
and
okay
Finance
with-
think it makes sense, which I don't know what they'll say, but I wouldn't
Yeah.
be surprised.
Yeah.
And and then we just we don't need to move as much out of capital stabilization to finish
Right.
paying it off.
otherwise,
Otherwise, we're borrowing that 300 because we have a borrowing authority today to borrow that.
right.
So you're gonna borrow more. Well, we have borrowing we haven't spent. So there's
Yeah.
like all these pieces.
A
Don't
lot
make
of
sense.
interest being paid for stuff that we're not actually doing anything with.
Right.
Okay.
So to put that out there, anyhow.
And the treasurer's meeting with our financial advisor to get you numbers on what it would look like to borrow that $300,000. So we'll have that for you at the end of the week.
Okay.
So we'll have that for the joint meeting too to inform the recommendations. Okay. Anything else on STM?
No.
Meeting minutes, March 31st, 2025.
Motion to approve meeting minutes from March 31st, 2025, as written.
Second.
Any discussion?
None.
Good, sir? Good?
That's it? Yeah.
Any discussion? No?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry.
That's all right. I didn't hear you if you said it. We have a letter of interest for the Conservation Commission from Cynthia Roy Clark.
I read through the letter, and I'm happy somebody has interest. Therefore, I will make a motion to appoint Cynthia Roy Clark as a member of the Conservation Commission, effective May 12, 2025, with a term ending June 30th, 2025.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Review and potential vote regarding the Franklin County Cooperative Inspection Program Agreement renewal. see the memo. I don't know of any reason we wouldn't want to
Yeah.
continue.
Yeah, I didn't see anything that jumped out as
Great.
a drastic change.
I don't know what the alternative would be.
Do it yourself.
More expensive? I'm
More
gonna guess.
expensive
Yes.
and more labor intensive.
More involved, right?
All of which I'm in favor of, so.
Agreed.
I'll save your voice, Jim. You got the last one. I'll make a motion to engage the Franklin Regional Council of Governments for professional building code and zoning enforcement service, plumbing and gas inspection service, and wiring inspection service for a term of 3 years effective July 1, 2025 through June 30th, 2028, and authorize Jacob Smith, Select Board Chair, to execute the agreement.
I will second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Review of the Community Development Block Grant, quarter ending March 31st, 2025 report. Any discussion?
Not on that.
Okay. Review and issuance of the 15th water commitment for FY25.
I'll make a motion to approve the final use water charges 15th commitment for fiscal year 2025 in the amount of $45.94, and authorize Michelle Turner, tax water collector, to take any action relative thereto.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Review of surplus equipment request, school department, first read.
There's a lot of them.
There are. Comments, questions, concerns?
My
No
only comment.
concerns on
Oh,
any.
go ahead. I have no concerns. My only comment would be is I know it says a lot of them were reallocate or dispose, auction, municipal bid. There's a lot of them in there that have some decent value, worthy of auctioning off and seeing what we can get for it. And
Makes sense to me.
some of these are just a couple of $100, but some in the aggregate thousands.
It's a lot of items too, so you never know.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much time to put stuff up. It's pretty quick and easy, right? Municipal bid.
That all depends.
They
Well,
both
that
laughed.
went-
They both laughed at you for that one. That was
They
pretty good.
did.
Yeah. Fair enough.
But yes, we can.
It's
we
been
can
net
auction.
positive so far, though, in the time, effort, and value
That's true.
in what we have decided. Because we've been thoughtful about what we auction. We don't throw everything up there and
Correct.
hope to get $1. So
I'm not saying auction all of it.
right, but
But
those items that
I
make
would
sense.
say any items that would have already been replaced that we have no useful life with anymore. If there's some sort of value that we could recoup out of it, auction it. If there really is some stuff in here that are just trash, I mean,
course.
just dispose of it.
Yeah.
Of course. We'll separate those piles out and photograph and inventory the items that would make sense to auction.
And we've already offered it out internally, other departments and such, or
We haven't
should do
gotten
that
this
first.
list out to
Okay.
town departments. I did check with the school principal about whether or not it's been offered to the other sister schools in the district, and there's been multiple overtures towards, would you be interested? And nobody's taken them up on it. So,
okay.
but we can definitely share it with town departments.
Yeah, I mean, we always want to use it internally if we can before we're going to auction it, but if we can't, then let's do that. Okay, Gary for second read. Review of the wastewater treatment fence installation project procurement. That is the one you sent today, right?
Came this afternoon.
Yes. Second email.
Let me give the high level.
Sure.
So we conducted an IFB for this procurement. Throughout the course of the IFB, we required a site visit, but offered 2 options for site visits. We had 5 eligible vendors as a result of that process and 4 submitted bids. When we conducted the bid opening, Pete and I did it on April 30th with vendors present. 2 of the bids that we opened did not contain the required 5% bid bond that was required in the documents and by state law. So there are 2 remaining bids. We've itemized all 4 for you and whether or not they had the bid bond. But the 2 remaining bids would be Guardrail Solutions LLC, and the final one would be Broder Campbell. Guardrail Solutions, we had a base bid and an Alt 1. The Alt 1 was the difference between using a tension wire along the base of the security fence versus an actual aluminum bar. The word's not coming to mind right now, but anyhow, rail, excuse me, for the base of the fence installation. So because Guardrail Solutions did not provide you with a breakdown between base bid and Alt 1, if you only want to offer base bid, I can't identify what that price would be, so they would have to reject that bid. But if you're looking to award the full contract, we do have that number for both Guardrail Solutions as well as Broder Campbell.
Because Guardrail Solutions bid the whole thing.
They bid the whole thing.
Okay.
Your max budget was 63,600? 63, yep.
Something like that.
Well, the whole thing or all?
Whole thing.
I'm sorry, the
Any interest in base only, or are we doing the whole thing? That's my first question. It's just
From a financial standpoint, it's the whole thing, because it's
okay.
$4,000 cheaper than just doing the base.
yes.
I'm surprised with some of the names on there. I feel like we've had work with them before that the bond wasn't there.
I
That's
know.
unfortunate, but
It's unfortunate. I was looking at both of the ones that didn't provide the bond, and it will cost us several $1,000s more to go with somebody else.
I'm assuming the base missing on the other one, even though I know they don't have the bond, is just a typo because they offered an alt, so there must be a. But that's how they presented it.
Anybody would like to look through the bid submissions?
Nope,
thoroughly?
nope. Just filling in boxes is
Got it.
okay. Got it. That's not us not filling in boxes.
No.
Okay.
I was trying to figure out what I should put in those boxes to make sure you didn't think it was me leaving it blank. But
No, you.
And he
I
still
made
did.
sure.
Fair
I
enough.
was trying to be maybe nicer to others than you. Sorry, sir.
I mean,
I
We
mean,
have the
I agree
funding
with you. We
and-
have the funding, and so
we-
yeah,
all right.
Total
Mhm.
is, you said 63
Total is within
was
the budget.
It's
Yeah.
within it, yeah.
All right.
You want a motion?
yes, please.
Make a motion to award the procurement for the installation of the wastewater treatment plant security fence project to Guardrail Solutions LLC of West Springfield, Mass. In the amount of $59,870, and to authorize Brian Smith, Town Administrator, to execute all necessary agreements.
Second.
Since our department heads are here, Glenn, Pete, any concerns?
I don't. I'm good.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
thank you, gentlemen.
Establish and appoint a local hazard mitigation planning committee.
You got 50% of them sitting right here this evening.
I know. I know, and Chief Wonka leading the project for us here is here. So obviously, if we have
Yeah.
questions for him, but it's a big group. I just keep looking at the number. 9 is a big group, but it's a critical item, so.
I was trying to
So-
remember the working group you had before, and I think it was similar sized. It wasn't a formal committee the last time. It was more of a working team. But it was a similar number of people.
Okay.
So,
Do you need something in the
Questions or-
vote language that would signify that we're still waiting on to signify that it's a 9-member and we're only appointing 7, not that it's a 7-member?
that makes sense.
We want to establish it at a size and then appoint some?
Some.
That would make sense, yeah.
Okay.
I'm already starting to get, we posted on the website last week, I'm starting to get community members who are submitting letters of interest.
Yeah, I just didn't want to establish it and not and have it be ambiguous, and we only put 7 on there, and somebody said, "Well, you only established it with 7. That's it."
Can I just ask, because the bulleted, I'm counting 6, not 7, who am I missing?
No, you're right. It is only
No,
6.
you're right. The 7th, I'm assuming, hasn't been identified or
That's correct. Yeah, I'm working,
confirmed yet. We're waiting
work-
on an answer from Erving
Correct.
Industries.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I was assuming we would have 1 from their area. The 2 would be the residents.
well, and that was the recommendation that came through us talking to the consultant. Are you okay with that recommendation? They are our largest industrial partners. It makes, I think for a lot of reasons, that makes sense.
They were at the table for the first time when we initially did it. too.
Were they both?
Yes.
Yeah, represented? Yeah, okay. I mean, especially not comparing them because of the business size, but because of the natural resource size that they're managing, First Light Power. Obviously, I think it's just critical, right? Because
Absolutely.
Yeah.
there's a lot of hazard to mitigate,
Correct.
or at least be aware of there
yes.
in natural resource sitting at the top of the hill. So
I'm acutely
you were
aware of
intimately
that.
aware, sir. But I think there's a lot of reasons it's true with Urban Paper as well.
Did we reach out to the railroad
Which time?
either time? I know we
That's
reached
yes.
out. I know we reached out to them the first time and
Which
nobody
time?
showed up.
I was stuck in customer service the last time I
Okay.
reached out, and I was told to call a different number, so I'll be working on that. They don't make it easy for us to partner with them, so we'll keep trying.
So in the motion, do we want to articulate a representative from the Irving Paper Mill?
We'll have to appoint them when they get named.
Right, we're not that.
So.
Just
Do you want me to
with
take a
the
swing
point
at
about,
it?
no, it was 6.
Well, I'm just going to say it's a 9-member. And we'll
Yeah, I
appoint
mean, we
6,
could-
which leaves a
So maybe this will help. We're talking about, and we'll vote momentarily probably, to establish a 9-member local hazard mitigation planning committee. 2 members, we are looking for community members. So anyone in the community is interested, please submit a letter of interest. We have 2 seats reserved for community members. The other seats have been identified, although we're not going to necessarily appoint them all tonight.
correct.
Does that cover what I think we're not saying
Yeah.
very clearly, which is
There's
there's 2 openings for
To
community.
Scott's point, I don't want somebody to come back later and say, no, you voted, and it was not 7, it was 6, and now this is it.
Yep. No, you're right.
So,
You're both right. I think we're just not communicating it very clearly.
I'm good with the 6 that have been named so far. Waiting
I
on
am
the
as
other
well.
3. I have no issues with
no
it.
concerns.
If there's other businesses or entities in town that reach out and to you, chief, or to any of us, and
Please.
ask or have concerns or have insight they'd like to bring it to the table. We can always readjust this membership, like we talked about earlier tonight, in a future meeting, if we feel there's a better makeup.
You want a motion?
Please, looked ready.
I'll make a motion to establish a 9-member local hazard mitigation planning committee and to appoint the following members to that committee with a term ending June 30th, 2026. Philip Wonka, Fire Chief and EMD, Glenn Johnson Masad, Town Planner, Robert Holst, Chief of Police, Glenn McCrory, Highway Superintendent, Peter Sanders, Water and Wastewater Superintendent, and Henry Burek, the Operations Manager of Northfield Mountain.
I will second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks, Chief. Um,
An update to the update? Brian was telling me about the update to the update.
I caught Jim before the meeting too.
Okay.
Did you send that to us?
Oh no, it was a verbal.
There's a written update, but then there's a verbal update to the written update.
Yes.
Maybe Brian.
Do you
can-
want to give us, thank you.
You're not aware of it?
I think I am, but now you guys have just confused me with your lingo. So we have
Yes.
a resignation or so from the senior director of senior services screening committee. Please elaborate.
So as you were about to announce, we have we had a resignation that we knew about last week of Leo Parent Jr. from the commission, or the committee, excuse me. And I was going to make the recommendation, and I did in the packet, that we would consider moving Selectman Loyng from the ex officio to fill that seat. Right before the committee meeting earlier this afternoon, I was informed that member Rebecca Miller is also tendering her resignation, effective, I believe, today. So if we do that, we're back to an even number of members again. So I don't know how the three of you would like to proceed. They are ready to start scheduling interviews with candidates.
It is currently a 7
It was currently a 7.
with 2 that have just resigned.
Right, so now we're
Correct.
down to
But-
5.
But we're down to 5 voting members.
And
Voting
st-
members.
And still have
And
one
still have a
ex
quorum and
officio.
still have an odd amount.
Yes.
I mean, still have
Correct.
a quorum and could still break
Correct.
a tie
Correct.
with no change.
Yes.
So there had been a recommendation for you to be a voting member to backfill the 1 seat, to
Right.
bring it back to odd voting members.
But if we are at 5, my opinion would be reverting back to what we discussed when we formed the 7-member committee, is I will remain as an ex officio member, and that this is a department head meeting, and we as a board will conduct a full and thorough
Final.
interview of recommended finalists.
Yes.
Okay. Any concerns with that? Then
No.
we won't make any changes to the committee as established. It just has 2 open seats. 2 members have resigned.
It just means
It-
that
it
in order
just
to
is.
maintain a quorum, they need,
They need
can only-
4.
They need
They will
4.
need 4 for the
4,
quorum.
right.
Yep.
If that becomes an issue, we can make a change
Yeah.
if we need to. But for now,
Okay.
thank you to Leo and Rebecca for, trying to fit it in and help us with it, and wish them the best. And we will continue with the remaining members and onward. Okay?
Thank you all.
With that, we have the payroll warrant for last period, payroll warrant 23. As authorized, I approve the payroll warrant on the due date of May 8th. Payroll amount was $217,868.55 in aggregate, and the payroll benefits warrant was $35,673.76. And then we have the 23rd AP warrant for FY25 here tonight.
I will make a motion to approve the 23rd accounts payable warrant for fiscal year 2025 in the aggregate amount of $412,172.22 as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, and then I have, we included a draft schedule, meeting schedule
Yeah.
for the rest of the fiscal year. Yep, we talked about most of it earlier. And the oath of office event is contemplated to be the same night as the special town meeting, so it's kind of convenient to do that in the half hour before.
Mhm.
That's already been sent out, right? I believe.
It's going out in the next, I mean, the people who need to be present for that to
Sure.
conduct it, no. The officials that you're going to reappoint will be getting that as part of the process of renewing their committee or representative assignments. And those all went out last week.
Okay. And anyone elected or re-elected could
Anybody
also
elected.
attend then,
Correct.
If
They're
they
all going to be
don't-
notified.
are not sworn in prior.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, no other business for, regular business for tonight. I'll move that we go into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21(3), to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining. If an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body, and the chair so declares, which I do. American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, Local 1725. We will not return to regular session. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Brian, will you call the roll?
Selectman Moyne,
Aye.
Chairman Smith,
Aye.
Selectman Bassarash.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.